Oh, shoot.
There it is.
Got up?
Yeah, it's up.
So does that show on like the front of my page, or do I need to tell people to hit like live stream? Do you know?
I don't know. Let's see.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to see. Oh, it does. It shows up at the top. Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. All right. We're all good there. Beautiful.
I don't see how you have time for all this, Joe.
Dude, it kills me sometimes. Today was crazy. It's a juggling act for sure. But it's good stuff, you know.
It is. Hopefully it's worth it and makes you super happy to do every day.
Most of the time, for sure. Most of the time. No, it's good, man. I mean, this is why I got into ministry to begin with, and it's the same reason I had to leave ministry, is because it didn't have enough of this. Just not enough people seem to really care.
It's okay. Give it a few months to a few years. You'll be on some news channel for this is when the new church finally started.
They'll never let me on there, man.
With Joe Martin.
No. I want a nice, small, little, tight-knit church somewhere in Illinois if I get stuck here. I want that, what did he call it? Homestead. I want a nice little homesteading church, you know, small community. I want to make a commune, man. That's what I want.
Yeah, there we go. We can just, everybody has their job, the chickens or cows or goats or whatever.
Exactly. Marie from Georgia. Hello. Hey, this is on YouTube. So I've got Drew on here with me. You're not going to be able to hear him if you're on TikTok. Mostly TikTok is on so that you see this and then you go over to YouTube. So my name is the same everywhere. So if you go youtube.com/tattootheist, we're going to go over chapters 6 and 7 out of 1 Corinthians and then have discussion and anybody who pops up in the live chat over there. So I'll try to read anything you guys put up here, but you're only going to hear my voice. So you're only going to get half of it.
85% of it.
No, you've been going harder, man. You've been going harder. Maria says she's headed there. Go, Maria, go. You got time. We got like 5 minutes before we actually start. And then probably a few more minutes just to let the slow people make their way on over. Man, what do we have in there now? Like 20 people?
Yeah, I think so. Last time I looked, it said like 3 were on and then 12 offline. So it's 15 last I checked. But, you know, that's last time I actually looked.
Let me see. I want to say I popped in this morning.
Hey, Alex is here.
See. Oh, it's easier to see on your phone. How do you see on the computer? Shoot. Server profile. Man, I don't know. You got 16 plus 4, so 20. Minus 1, because it's a bot, so 19. Like I said, so I posted a story on Instagram and then one on TikTok, like right when I rolled in from work, and I had 8 people over there and 2 on Instagram. So I'm saying, so if we get like 10% of everybody who expresses interest, that's phenomenal. That's fabulous. Alex is here.
Yeah, saw that. I would type something to you, Alex, but I can't type in YouTube because long story. So
it's because he doesn't want to subscribe to me because he's bitter, and that's why.
I am just under my account. And I don't know the password, so I'm not even on mine.
Oh, Kat, what are you doing, Kat? My girl just got in on TikTok.
I was about to say the cat that just walked around, or your girl?
Yeah, different cat. Different cat down there. My cat's just creeping, I guess. Oh, she said, I miss your face. I miss your face.
Aww. Just kidding.
Oh, God. She said, don't make me regret it. I always make you regret it at some point. It's only a matter of time.
That's what we do.
That is a husband's role. Annoy the hell out of your wife.
Mine will tell you I'm very good at it. She just knows I do it on purpose, and it'll just like make her so mad, but it's like happy mad.
Yeah, no, that's our life. That's half of our relationship is just antagonizing each other.
Like when she used to work nights, she'd like get home like 8 in the morning after working like 13 hours, and we'd be doing something, and I'd be like, "It's not like you've done anything today."
Ha!
The day had just started.
Brutal. Your girl's a hard worker too. Anybody on TikTok, if you didn't hear a minute ago, you're gonna miss half of what's going on. TikTok is just up to try to migrate you over to YouTube. So youtube.com/tattootheist. We've got the chapters up. I've got Drew on here too, and then the live chat will be going. It doesn't actually start for another couple of minutes. We'll let a few minutes past 6 roll over, so anybody who's trying to get here can get here. All of these get recorded, and if you want to get in the Discord where your cat says, "Hey, Drew." If you want to get in the Discord where you can kind of follow along during the week, ask questions, add comments, talk to people about what's going on, whatever, and then also know all of these ahead of time so you're not scrambling, then you can DM me either on Instagram or over there on TikTok, and I will send you a link to the Discord. Dustin. Thanks for coming, Dustin.
Yes, thank you.
Dustin, were you from TikTok or Instagram? I'm going to work really hard to try to connect accounts to people as they cross things. It's going to be very difficult.
Like a flow chart.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need. All right, wait a few more minutes. How was it for you reading these?
Great.
Right?
As always, I'm loving this so far.
It's the best, man.
It kind of, I don't know, I was kind of wondering I don't know, I guess I don't want to get into it before we get into it.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Did you take notes and stuff?
Yeah, I did. Mainly just some highlighting. I didn't have to like write it down this time to keep it in my head.
Perfect. It's good stuff, man. These two were good.
TikTok is how we found you. Seems like you're TikTok now.
I'm telling you, that thing blew up. The way they run things is just very different. As long as you can catch attention for like a minute, they just like propel you, like bizarrely. I think it's just to hook you, man. I think they get that dopamine kick in all the kids and stuff who want to be influencers or whatever, and so they let you get that one or two that hit like 1 million. So you're just like dying to keep getting it. I truly think that's what they're doing. I think it's a solid game. Wouldn't be surprised.
Well, it's working.
Oh my God, is it working? People are addicted to that thing. It's wild.
That's crazy. I remember when you had it big on Instagram. I remember like you had so much stuff like you couldn't hardly reply to everybody.
It was impossible. Yeah, it got to a point. I was talking to Kat last night actually about like that's why YouTube even started, was because we've literally talked about what, Kat? Go to YouTube, Kat. You know better. What are you doing? Move. I was telling her last night that's why YouTube even started, is because on Instagram I couldn't keep up with, especially because they're repetitive questions. Can I get tattoos? Can I smoke weed? Can I do this? Can I do that? And that's why I was finally just made the tattoo video, and then it just went from there. Oh, Mercedes made it. Glad you're
Discord,
here.
Right?
Yes, yeah. But I don't remember where she came from before that. It's going to be a crazy mix. Cass says there's one person per X amount of accounts who blow up a video of their choosing. Oh, yeah. So she thinks it's like the TikTok staff that kind of picks and chooses who they like, and then they propel the video. I think that's probably part of it, but I think you also like have to catch the attention of people to keep them there. Who knows though, man? It's some witchcraft they're doing with those algorithms. All right, you want to go ahead and get started?
Sure. I'm here for however long.
All right, let me see.
Or at least until the 2-year-old girl comes like banging on the door. Daddy!
Yeah, she's going to come hit me in the back of the head.
She might try.
She's just talking trash in TikTok. Okay, I'm going to ignore you now, okay? I love you, bye. All right, chapter 6. Lawsuits against believers. This one gets confusing, but once you think about it, it gets pretty clear. So when one of you has a grievance against another, does he dare go to law before the unrighteous instead of the saints? And what he's talking about is in Rome specifically, and in Greece, you had this propensity for the people. They really liked litigation. So it's something they were like super into. So they would actually take each other to court kind of for fun almost. It was something that like provided them a sort of status. It was a very culturally rich thing that they were doing. So like juries back then had on average 40 people. Ours are on average 12. And they went up to 100. And then some of them went up to 1,000 people on a jury. So this is like jury duty was something people genuinely enjoyed doing. So it was a part of their culture. So he's saying, when you had grievance against one another, does he dare to go to the law before the unrighteous, meaning the secular law, not keeping it in the church, but taking it out of the church instead of the saints? And that's who the saints are, would obviously be the Christians. Verse 2, or do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And then he's referring to the day of judgment. So once everything happens, Christ comes back, second return, then it's said in Revelation that the Christians will then judge the people of the earth. That's why when people talk about, we're not to judge each other, it's really odd because the Bible is actually full of teachings towards Christians to specifically judge each other, specifically to judge each other as Christians. And then it talks a lot about at the end time, Christians will be a part of kind of the final judgment towards the world. So, or do you not know that the saints will judge the world? That's what he's referring to. And if the world is to be judged by you, are you incompetent to try trivial cases? So he's saying what you guys are arguing about, what you guys are taking each other to court, what you're having litigation over, they're trivial matters. These are things that should be kept inside the church. They're not things that you should take to the secular world and air your dirty laundry. Verse 3, do you not know that we are to judge angels, meaning to judge each other? How much more then matters pertaining to this life? So if you have such cases, why do you lay them before those who have no standing in the church? Again, referring to the secular litigation world. Verse 5, I say this to your shame, as always, savage. Can it be that there is no one among you wise enough to settle a dispute between the brothers? So he's saying, is nobody within the church spiritually mature enough to be kind of the counsel to help you guys figure this out together so that you do not have to go air dirty laundry out in public litigation with the secular world outside of the church? Verse 6, but brother goes to law against brother, and that before unbelievers. Verse 7, to have lawsuits at all with one another is already a defeat for you. Why not rather suffer wrong? Why not rather be defrauded? But you yourselves wrong and defraud even your own brothers. So there, basically what he's saying, honestly, is referring to what Jesus says about the slapping of the cheek. He's saying if somebody slaps you in the cheek, you got to turn the other cheek and take it on the other side. So he's saying, people are saying, well, should I just be defrauded? Should I just take what's happening to me? And what he's essentially saying is within the church, sometimes, yes. Sometimes, if he steals your cloak, you should give him another one and you should go buy another one for yourself. So kind of bold statements, kind of blanket statements too. It gets complicated when you get into the nitty gritty of it. Verse 9, or do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor the idolaters, nor the adulterers, nor men who practice homosexuality. And we're going to come back to this. Verse 3, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor the drunkards, nor the revilers, nor the swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. Verse 11, and such were some of you, saying some of you are doing these things that the people who will not inherit the kingdom of heaven are doing. But you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of God. So he's saying, obviously, you guys are doing these things. Some of you are practicing these things, specifically these sexually immoral things. But he's saying, even outside of that, these are things that you are all practicing, but you are now washed. These are things that you have been cleansed of. These are things you've been sanctified of. And now you should move on from those things. So going back to, let me see. Actually, no, let's run through it and then we'll come back to all of it. Flee from sexual immorality. Verse 12. All things are lawful for me. This is a reference to chapter 10, I believe. And it's again when he was talking about the meat in the markets that was being sacrificed to idols. This is a direct quote. He used it again over in that verse. And we will come back to that again. And I'll read that for you because he alters it slightly in chapter 10. But it's one of his favorite things to say. Is all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. And what the reference is that all things as a Christian now, and this relates to so many things that people are always asking me, but asking anybody who's Christian, is that we have this freedom under Christ. We're no longer under the law. We no longer have the Mosaic, Levitical law. We don't have the 613 things that we got to keep. You have freedom under Christ. But he's saying, yes, that is true, but not all things are helpful. So in that freedom, if you drink to a certain degree, is that helpful for you? If you drink to a small degree, socially, you can connect with people, but you can justify that to some degree. But are these things helpful? Yes, you are free to do them. And he says that constantly throughout the New Testament in tons of his epistles, is you have freedom under Christ to do these things. Feel free, go for it. But are they helpful? And then he goes on, all things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything. So are these things something that are going to hook me? So are you free to smoke weed? Yeah, you're free to smoke weed. Is that helpful? That's a toss-up. Maybe yes, maybe no. Will you become dominated by that thing? If yes, then no, don't do that. And this is kind of like how Paul continually tries to talk to the New Testament churches about how to discern what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, because we are under that freedom. So it's very open-ended, and he tries to kind of dial it in that way. And he goes a little bit further in that other chapter that we're reading a little bit. Verse 13, food is meant for the stomach and the stomach for food. And God will destroy both one and the other. The body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. Verse 14, and God raised the Lord and will also raise us up by his power. 15, do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them members of a prostitute? Never. 16, or do you not know that he who is joined to a prostitute becomes one body with her? For as it is written, I think everybody knows where he's going, the two will become one flesh. 17, but he who is joined to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. 18, flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. That verse right there is where people will get the idea that sexual sin is the only sin that you can kind of argue is on a different level, is slightly elevated in terms of severity because of this right here. And there's another reference in another one of his epistles, but he kind of sets sexual immorality apart as a blanket statement. So any sexual immorality slightly elevated above, what you might call common sin compared to it. Every other sin a person commits is outside of the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body, the own body that is, made in the image of God. 19, or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. You want to stop right here before we go too far? You got anything for 6?
I was just saying, he says the same things kind of over and over almost about, it's your choice, free. I think it's just he's putting out there the free will thing.
Yes.
You do what you want. You can do whatever you want. But if you're looking to be a part of God's kingdom, if you're looking to be Christ-like. If you're looking, you need to follow or kind of do these things. And as for wait, where did it go? I don't know. I think that's all I had for that. And yeah, I guess that's what I was about to say. I'd highlighted sexual immorality, every other sin commit is outside the body. I'd highlighted outside the body.
Yes. Yeah. So let me see.
Oh, I was gonna ask you. Saw something.
Go.
Where did he go? Where he says like, should you just go ahead and be defrauded? Do you think he's saying like, it looks like he's mainly talking about like property or money, like monetary things. You don't think he's talking about like criminal things, do you? For like if somebody stabbed you or something?
Probably not, but it's definitely not at all clear. So, but I would say probably not. Things like that, and I'd say most of that, anything that was that blatant or obvious would probably leak from the church anyways. It's an interesting question, honestly. I've never thought of it like that. But no, it was mostly these were civil litigations that he was talking about that we know of.
Because they had so much fun taking each other to court anyway. That's probably why I just specified that. Yeah,
it was kind of like a fancy status thing. It's bizarre, man. When you read some of the history about it in Greece, it was odd. It was really, really odd. But it was something that they were all like, they were very into it. It showed status. It showed kind of intelligence. It was a pride thing. It was you getting over on somebody else. What is classified as sexual immorality? Fiseo. I'm so sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Sexual immorality is entirely a blanket statement. So I can definitely pull up kind of a condensed list of what the New Testament refers to as that. But in this context, and we're going to get into it a little bit here later, and I'll reference it right now, is you've got the one place I will tell you the King James Bible actually translates something a little bit better than in other places is in, let me see, actually, is it in 7? It might be in 7. Yeah, give me a minute and then we'll get to it. It's in 7. But this reference to homosexuality, so there's 2 Greek words that commonly get mistranslated in a lot of the newer, like the NIV, the ESV, and the King James was one that actually kept it closer to what it should have been. So we'll get there. But in general, sexual immorality refers to anything that, the way Paul puts it, is not natural, is not within God's natural order of what sexual relationships and behavior were supposed to be. So another thing that was happening in the surrounding cultures in Greece and in Rome, where you had, and that term homosexuality in the old translations, it's split into 2 terms. And one of them refers to the effeminate man who takes more of the female role within a homosexual relationship. And the other Greek term refers to the dominant male who takes more of the male form in the relationship. And in the surrounding cultures, you had a lot of, specifically in Rome, but Greece did it too, you had a lot of men whose status was contingent and dependent upon them having a young boy as their subdominant sexual partner. So homosexuality was rampant in Rome and in Greece both. And that was kind of the dynamic. So a lot of what he's referring to here in Corinth, because these were cultures that they idolized, and it was a part of the problem in the Church of Corinth specifically above any of the others, was because they were idolizing these cultures, and those cultures were idolizing these, what Paul calls, unnatural sexual practices. And so he refers to homosexuality in and of itself, but more specifically, he really is referring to a lot of the what we call pedophilia. And in that time, in that culture, it was a big status thing. It was something that, I mean, that's really it. It was status. It was very normal for them. It wasn't seen as anything like we see that today. We would see that as criminal today. At least most people would see that as very criminal today. And it wasn't at all at the time.
And I was going to say, it also says somewhere, doesn't it say like somebody who leaves the natural use for the body Like
Yes.
the way somebody's described it to me before was like the pen and the top, they go together. This is the natural use for the pen.
Yes.
Obviously that fits, but then if I get two tops,
Doesn't fit.
it doesn't fit. That
Yes.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
So like
That's
the natural use.
exactly. Exactly. And he just always goes back to this one Greek term that it literally just translates as natural, whether it's
Was it?
natural or not.
I got malakos and arsenicotes or
Yeah, for the homosexuality.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you using?
ESV Study Bible.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's awesome. They put that in there.
Yeah.
So does it have is it like a parallel or does it just give you notes?
Yeah, it just has notes.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So they used to be split in a lot of the older translations, and I think it was practicing homosexuality and sodomite or sodomizer. It was some kind of wording like that.
In Romans 1:26-27, I guess they use a Greek word for female homosexual and homosexual desire or passion. So I didn't look that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. Sexual immorality is rough, man, because it is a dramatically is an umbrella term, but it covers it covers a multitude of things. But to say it very simply, like Drew was saying, it's Paul refers to it as something that is unnatural. Cass says we always talk about sinning as it pertains to weed, drugs, alcohol, etc. But what about poor food choices? If our body is a temple, if we have the ability to eat healthy food, isn't it a sin to not?
You said that a few lives ago, didn't you? Said something about what we eat.
Yeah, well, I mean that's always my thing when with the tattoo thing on TikTok was everybody would throw this out there, and it goes back to what Paul's kind of saying in the beginning is not all things are, or so what do you say? All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. Not all things are helpful. So can you eat trash food? Sure. Can you get tattoos? Sure. Can you smoke weed? Sure. Can you drink? Sure. Are all these things helpful? So obviously trash food is not helpful. And then you have to remember we live in reality, and everybody kind of picks and chooses where they give and where they take. And that's just the reality of it. And anybody who pretends like they don't is pretty simply a liar. And I try to steer away from that. I'd rather live in reality where you make the smarter choices you can, and you're conscious of that. And it goes back to, again, what he was talking about, where then if you are dominated by that thing, so whether it's weed or whether it's trash food or whether it's pornography or whatever it is, if even though it may be lawful, even if it is not helpful, if you become dominated by it, then that would be considered living in sin. That would be in a perpetual sinful state. And that would be considered, obviously, very much wrong. Like somebody who commits adultery can come back from that potentially, in theory. But if you live in that state, then you are an adulterer. And that's kind of the differentiation.
Another big thing people have with like homosexuality. They're like, sin is sin. It's all fine. It's like you're living in it though. Like it dominates.
Yes.
Your life. You're not like you didn't like commit the sin once, and you're like, I'm trying to stop it.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes a part of you. It becomes a behavior. And that's when, you've taken it too far. I found in chapter 10, it's chapter 10, 1 Corinthians 23. All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbors. And then he goes on to talk about the eating of the sacrificed meat. So it slightly differs from what we had read, but not all things build up. And we talked, I think, that was the live I did alone, actually, wasn't it? I think with the meat sacrificing to the idols. I think that was the first one that I did. Or was that with you? Chapter 10?
I don't know. I thought I started 11. Oh, did we do 11? Or was
I think we might have, and then we restarted. That might have been what happened.
The first one, then.
So very similar to what he was saying here, but obviously slightly different. All right, you got anything else for 6?
I don't think so. I think
Karina made it.
Yeah, no, she's on vacation, and man, she showed up last night. I feel bad.
I know. I'm so sorry, Karina. I feel so bad. I had the wrong date in there. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, you're a legend.
I'm horrible. All right, let me see. All right, 7. Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, It is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. 2. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. I'll read that again. Beginning of 7. Now concerning the matter about which you wrote, quote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. Verse 2. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. Verse 3. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. Verse 4. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. And I really like that Paul wrote that the way that he wrote that, the way that he decided to dictate that, because there are other verses within the Bible, specifically Old Testament, there are some in the New, where it's primarily put on that the woman is in that kind of submissive role. And I think that's very confusing for especially modern women and modern day relationships. And so I really like that specifically in Corinthians, that he was very diligent in putting it both ways. Verse 5, do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Now, I feel like we should probably come back to that, because that's another interesting concept. Verse 6, now as a concession, not a command, I say this. I wish that you all were as I myself am, but each has his own gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. Verse 8, to the unmarried and the widows, I say that it is good for them to remain single, as I am. Paul was single. Verse 9, but if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry. Meaning, if you cannot stay away from sexual immorality as an unmarried person, marriage is something you should do. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. Interesting way that translates is that it can kind of go both literal and figurative. Verse 10, to the married I give this charge, not I, but the Lord. The wife should not separate from her husband, but if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband. And the husband should not divorce his wife. That is another one we need to come back with, because I actually have been asked that 3 times this week. Verse 12, to the rest I say, I, not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. Verse 13, if any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. 14, for the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. 15, but if the unbelieving partners separate, let it be so. In such case, the brother or sister is not enslaved. Very interesting. God has called you, verse 2, to peace. 16, I'm sorry, that was verse 2. That was a footnote. I apologize. God has called you to peace. 16, for how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? So let's pause there real quick. You have anything there before I go on those few?
Let's see. Nah, first page. Man, that's the question I was gonna ask you before we started the live, when you said, did you have any for this one? But like the separation between not I but the Lord, some commanding things, and then I, not the Lord, and then he says some things. So like, how they're supposed to do both, or I know you're supposed to do at least one, but like
wait, I guess what do you mean? So when he says 12?
Like 10, it says, to the married I give this charge, like not I, but the Lord says.
Yeah.
And then he says the wife should not. But then 12, to the rest, I, the Lord didn't say it, but I'm saying it. I mean, I know it says, I can't find the word now. Like I guess he can write some things on his own. But I don't know. I was just kind of confused by the I, not the Lord. Yeah, 12.
So he's kind in the way that he's doing that, he's just kind of saying like, this is not a Pauline command. This is straight from God. So he's kind of saying like he got revelation of some kind. So in the case of the wife, you should not separate. And in the case of the brother has a wife who's an unbeliever, you should not separate. It's another like complementary set of verses where he's backing one with the other. But the but I not the Lord, it's kind of odd because he doesn't do that a lot. If you really pay attention, it's a very rare thing.
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Until we started.
It's a handful of times tops that he ever does that. So that's why a lot believe that it was kind of like he felt very strong revelation about it. But it's another thing, like there's no clarity at all. It's just something that really stands out. And it is interesting. It's something that people don't catch.
I like it. I mean,
yeah.
If one of them's not a believer, I feel like the other one could. If the unbeliever and the believer really truly love each other, I feel like eventually it's probably going to cross over to the believing side, I would imagine.
And that's what you see a lot. And then it's honestly why it's kind of interesting that a lot of leaders in church will really, really push people away from getting married to someone who's not of the same faith. And you understand why with the whole yoke verse and everything, to not yoke yourself to an unbeliever and everything like that. And there's obviously risk to doing that, in that your kids could grow up in, a house that doesn't fully function that way. And that can be detrimental to them for sure. But it's one of those things that's interesting about the Bible is you got to really pay attention because you see a lot of things like that seem like contradictions, but they're really not. But I love it too. I think it's kind of beautiful, man. And there's a lot of faith there. There can be crossover.
I had a long time, I don't remember when, but I had a girl that I was dating or about to be dating or whatever, something. And she was like, because she didn't really go to church. She was like, do you think you could ever date someone who doesn't? And I said, well, yeah. So I'm not going to not just because you don't go. But, my hope would be that, eventually you'd like to go and at least try it.
Yeah, exactly.
Go from there.
Exactly. Were you and your wife both on the same page when you met?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
thought. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, it's definitely easy.
How lucky.
Yeah. Oh, man. You have anything else for these? Or for this section? Anything pre-17?
I don't think so, unless you got anything additional that in all your wisdom, that your children would be unclean. Like if it was two unbelieving people that had kids, are they all unclean? Or
it's really just a reference to not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the obvious that you want to think more about than it actually is. Just that they're not under faith. So do not deprive, verse 5. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So this is a controversial one, and I want to say I did a video on this years ago because it was a big question of I did actually. Is it okay to withhold sex from your spouse? And biblically, Paul was pretty against it. And it's for exactly what he said. It's people, specifically men, but women also. And I feel like due to culture and shifts and the way people have become, I feel like women are much more susceptible to it now than maybe they were once upon a time. But that drive that if you're not getting physically met the way you need to be physically met, you have the potential to fall away from your marriage. And that was, again, this is the letter to the Corinthians. This is not just the Bible full of quotes that are very nice and sound good for your Facebook. This is the church that was disgusting in their practice and their behavior and their ideology and their philosophy. So there was a lot of straying. There was a lot of adultery. That's why you hear the word adultery over and over and sexual immorality over and over and over, because it was their main thing. They really liked the sexual immorality. So he's trying to clarify it. That's why he also said, if you're not married and you're struggling, you should probably just get married so that you stop struggling and you stop committing these sexual acts outside of the bounds of marriage. That no, it's technically not okay to withhold sex from your partner. Now, if you have a medical reason, if you're, experiencing depression, if you're anxious, there's a reasons, and that's why he says agreed upon for a limited time. Now, he only gives the specifics to prayer, but I believe that would extend to things that are medical or mental health. But just withholding sex from a partner, I would say, would fall outside of the lines of what Paul would direct. And it's due to the fact that would make you weak. And then that leaves you vulnerable to fall to things that would wreck potentially your marriage and then potentially wreck your family.
And then this is kind of why Catholic people or bishops or priests, because they say, Paul was against marriage. He wasn't against it. It was more of if you can be single without having those burning desires and without lusting and without all of that, do it.
Yes.
Because it's easier, because then you don't have to worry about, I think it gets into that next, you don't have to worry about the worldly things as much. You can focus all your attention on God and his kingdom and all of that. But if you can't go without sinning or being sexually immoral, then you need to find you someone and stick with that one person.
You gotta do it. Yeah. You gotta protect yourself. And I think, anything sexual immorality based, I think these things are going to become paramount in culture as culture becomes more sexually explicit, just in nature, in public. Sex is a much more public thing. It's a much more talked about thing. It's a much more frequent thing. The amount of people are sleeping with is skyrocketed since, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. It's the entire culture around sex has just so dramatically changed that I think all of these concepts around sexual immorality, you can see in society and in culture. We're trying to, the guy I did the video on last night, that pastor that you sent me the video of too, that I said, I saw that. It was it was a short just hit cause, but you have pastors like that, you have churches like that, you have people like that from the secular world who are trying to degrade what even the Bible says about sexual immorality. And it's wild to hear the way that they try to, it's truly baffling to hear them try to justify some of this stuff.
Said it's, if you were to have been that preacher or priest, this next Sunday, and you'd have just said the things we just said, probably half or more of his people wouldn't have come back.
100%.
And then he wouldn't have had enough money to do this and that. Church might have shut down. And so they're like, well, society's changing, so we got to kind of make it change with it. And
those are some of the stronger churches that are doing that. Like Alex just said, churches are doing a huge disservice by not discussing this. Yeah, those are the strong churches who are doing a disservice by not discussing these things. So then when that trickles down, when the weaker churches, when the more progressive churches, and not to make it political, but just people who are more on that bend already, when they start to see that the strong churches who were once fundamental in things like this are starting to falter, are starting to give a little, these progressive churches are just dropping off a freaking cliff. And that's what you're seeing with these churches painting rainbow stairs up into their, and then putting rainbow banners over their thing. The seminary that I ended up not finishing at for my master's degree had rainbow streamers all through the hallways. It's slowly trickled down. And then now you have these big churches who began by not talking about it. And then they started kind of fiddling with the verses and fiddling with the way that they were talking about it to make it more pleasing and more easily digestible. And then now you have even strong churches just completely bastardizing the text and lying. Because you have to think people who are biblical scholars, with degrees and who really studied this and understand it, they're lying. They have to know. They have to know. Unless you're just truly deluded. That's why people call it what's going on a cult. And I don't want to get into politics again. I feel like we always kind of do. But that's what they call it cults, because people get so twisted in their head. So I think some people really, they get so twisted and so broken and lost that they're not intentionally doing it. But I think a large number of the churches, they know what they're doing, but they know they have salaries they need to pay. They know that they have a building they need to keep running. They know that they have all this stuff going. And I think, morals tend to fall to the wayside when things get risky. But that's, I mean, if nothing else, that's a total lack of faith and standing firm in your faith. It's wild. All right. Let's see. All right, this was the other one, 10. Did you ever talk about this? No, right?
Nah.
No.
Well,
we read it, but we didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess your point we did.
My stupid point. But...
It's not a stupid point. Shut up, Drew. To the married, I give this charge, not I, but the Lord. The wife should not separate from her husband, but if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband. And the husband should not divorce his wife. So I got a few questions this week, oddly kind of out of nowhere, about this exactly. So about if you get divorced, is it a sin to then get remarried? And then if you stay married to that second person, are you living in perpetual sin? What do you think about that? Just out of curiosity. It's very tough, so don't feel bad.
No, isn't it kind of one-sided? Isn't it like if... I'd have to look up and find it, but isn't it like if like a divorced man marries a woman, now she's an adulterer or something like that, or is it reversed? I don't remember, but isn't it kind of like easier for one to leave than the other? I don't remember. I really don't.
You know, it sounds kind of familiar, but I also think maybe I'm twisting it with a different verse, with a different concept. I think so. There's several reasons that you're justified in getting divorced, right? That the Bible gives, do things like adultery. So there's justifiable reasons, but what he's talking about here is kind of more narrow than that.
Okay.
In that you're to be unmarried unless you can reconcile. And I guess the thing that it was 3 women that asked it, and biblically we don't have a lot. So you have this, and then you have the verse that refers to adultery. And honestly, I can't remember what the other thing was, but there were two reasons that you could get divorced. If anybody knows it off the top of your head, throw it in there. But it was adultery and something else that would give you kind of merit to divorce your husband or wife. And their question was, one of them had already been remarried and she was feeling really guilty, and the other one was wanting to get remarried. The tough thing about it is that this is really all we have. This right here and the other verse there. And marriage was so dramatically different in the Old Testament, and then from Old Testament to New Testament, hundreds of years. Marriage was dramatically different between those two groups of texts. And then if you go from New Testament to now, marriage is not even recognizable. So what we consider marriage today is almost nothing like what marriage was during the time that this was written. Marriage is wildly different. So marriage back then was, women were more property than people still. It had changed a lot in the time of the New Testament, but that was still what it was. Women were mostly subservient. Women were mostly on the quieter end of things. Women didn't really own businesses. Women were kind of arm candy for men. And I say that like with absolute love and no disrespect. It's just kind of, it's what it was. The way marriage worked was very different. Marriage was an arrangement between two people. And a lot of the time it was from the family. And a lot of the time it had to do with something monetary. So marriage was very rarely about love, at least in the beginning. There obviously love would happen a lot of the time after the fact. Like arranged marriages still happen today, and they're wildly successful actually. And usually the people end up falling in love with each other. So love is an action. It's not, a fleeting emotion. But marriage was so wildly different. So what I told them, and this is totally Joe, this is not Bible, because honestly we don't have a lot, is that there are valid reasons to leave a marriage, in my opinion. And I think, especially if you have kids, staying in a marriage that is not healthy does more damage to your kids than good. It does more damage to the two of you than good. And it's probably best to leave that marriage. And then if it is something that will help build you up, that will help, just like Paul was saying, not all things are lawful, not all things are helpful, not all things build up. Well, what if getting remarried builds up? And what if it is helpful? And what if it propels you?
Alex just said.
Right, is that what he said? It seems like if getting married keeps you out of Lustful sin, it shouldn't be. Exactly. That's another really good point. Yeah. So that was kind of the approach that I took with them. And again, just totally clarified. That is me. That is not the Bible, because we just don't have it. But that's my opinion from all of the context of everything, the way they talk about marriage, the way they talk about, just Christian life. And it's this, plus it's what Alex said. That's my belief, is that remarriage is something you can definitely do, in my opinion. Because
I was gonna say, I thought you were asking about an opinion, like biblically wise, but not personally. No, I'm with you. With kids is what makes it so much harder.
Yes.
Like if you have a dysfunctional marriage, you're not only you two dysfunctional and ruining possible future, but then you're harming a child in the thing. And then also what Alex said, and then also somewhere in the Bible doesn't it say like it wants you to have a partner, it wants you to have someone that makes you happy. Like God doesn't want you to be lonely.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you do get divorced, then does he want you to be lonely now?
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah, I mean, and that what you're referring to is referred to from Genesis, what God said about men and women to begin with, specifically about man, but he didn't want man to be alone. So yeah, that's where I kind of land on all that stuff. But that's another. There's a lot of stuff, man. Like, you're lying if you say that it's clear and cut, because it's just not.
No,
so you have to take all these surrounding contexts, and you have to try to make as much sense of it as you can. All right, you have anything else there? You want to move on to live as you are called?
What time is it? I say we move on.
Move on. Live as you are called. 17. Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him, and to which God has called him. This is my rule in all the churches. 18. Was anyone at the time of his call already circumcised? Let him not seek to remove the marks of circumcision. Was anyone at the time of his call uncircumcised? Let him not seek circumcision. 19. For neither circumcision counts for anything nor uncircumcision, but keeping the commandments of God. 20. Each one should remain in the condition in which he was called. 21. Where you are bondservant when called, do not be concerned about it. That is point blank. You got brackets there. But if you can gain your freedom, avail yourself of the opportunity. 22. For he who has called in the Lord as a bondservant is a freedman of the Lord. Likewise, he who is free when called is a bondservant of Christ. 23. You were bought with a price. Do not become bondservants of men. So, brothers, in whatever condition each was called, there let him remain with God. This is all pretty straight up, but did you have anything from there? No, don't get twisted with non-essential things.
Basically.
Thesis statement.
That makes it easier to go through than to try to pick all that apart.
Yeah, the words make it confusing, but that's essentially what he's saying. Paul kind of always seems to talk in circles to get the point across. The unmarried and the widowed. 25. Now concerning the betrothed, I have no command from the Lord, but I give my judgment as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. 26. I think that in view... Do you have something?
Oh, that's what I was looking for earlier back on 12 when I said, I, not the Lord. He is trustworthy. I couldn't find it.
Okay, right, gotcha. 26. I think that in view of the present distress, it is good for a person to remain as he is. 27. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be free. Are you free from a wife? Do not seek a wife. 28. But if you do marry, you have not sinned. And if a betrothed woman marries, she has not sinned. Yet those who marry will have worldly troubles, and I would spare you that. 29. This is what I mean, brothers. The appointed time has grown very short. From now on, let those who have wives live as though they had none, and those who mourn as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing, and those who buy as though they had no goods. 31. And those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it, for the present form of this world is passing away. 32. I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. 33. But the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife. 34. And his interests are divided. And the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and spirit, but the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. I say this for your own benefit, not to lay any restraints upon you. That's very, very important. Not to lay any restraints upon you. Ugh. I just had a pop up, sorry. But to promote good order and to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord. So not to be split in mind, not to be essentially distracted. 36, if anyone thinks that he is not behaving properly toward his betrothed, if his passions are strong, and it has to be, let him do as he wishes. Let them marry. It is no sin. But whoever is firmly established in his heart, being under no necessity, but having his desire under control, and he's determined this in his heart to keep her as his betrothed, he will do well. 38. So then he who marries his betrothed does well, and he who refrains from marriage will do even better. He's essentially calling these things distractions within this context. 39. A wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but if her husband dies, she is free to be married to whom she wishes, only in the Lord. 40. Yet in my judgment, she is happier if she remains as she is. And I think that I too have the Spirit of God. So there's a lot there. And again, it's him talking in circles. It's him kind of being confusing for no reason. But I feel like kind of the main points get across regardless. Mikkel.
I know. He popped in real quick.
You made it. Man, we were worried about you. The last two, you were MIA. I'm glad to see you. Do you have anything specific there, or was it confusing to you? If you read it a few times, you can see that he's talking in circles, but it's mainly about distractions, not to be distracted. If you're in a state of good spirituality, essentially.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I highlighted kind of was the appointed time is growing very short. Is he talking about like back then? They thought when Jesus said he was coming back, they thought he meant like pretty soon.
Yeah, what verse was it in? Let me see the surrounding.
29. The appointed time from now on, let those who have wives live as though they don't have one. What is he? I guess what is he meaning? Like the time is short. Don't worry about your worldly wife right now and try to get right. Or
I'd say it's probably metaphorical. So I don't think he's directly relating it to end time. But too, with Corinthians, some of the timing stuff it's kind of confusing with them because it seemed that Paul had a slight worry that this church was going to split to no repair. So there could also be like a minor reference to that and trying to stay focused due to what was going on in the greater context of the Corinthian church, and that it was kind of make or break time, that there was so much division, there was so much immorality, there was so much intermingling in sexually immoral ways that the church was beginning to really split. So, but my opinion would be that it's more metaphorical there in that context.
Okay.
Joe, realistically, almost all marriages, both secular and even among believers, lack true agape love, largely psychologically conditioned and imposed by the socioeconomic structure historically. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Drops bombs whenever he comes in.
Always. He's got the heat, always and forever. Yeah, I mean, that's really sad, man, what marriage has become for the most part. Obviously not for everybody. Marriage is very meaningful for some people and still has a traditional idea of love, but it's definitely shifted. And culture has not helped. I didn't have much here. It's all pretty straightforward within the circles of the speaking to me, but if you had anything.
I really didn't. I was just kind of, I guess I would have said about, that's why Paul wasn't against marriage. He was just kind of, like, it's going to be more distractions religious wise. Not like, it's good to be married if you want to be, but like if you can do it, without having the lust and all that, then you can have more time to focus on godly things and the Lord and stuff like that. But when you're married, you're gonna be distracted. You're gonna want to please your spouse. So
Yeah, exactly. I think that's part two why it can be extremely important for the two of you to be on the same page, because then that distraction, at least some of that distraction in and of each other, can be at least pointed in that same productive direction. 7:15. Brothers or sister is not bound. So it's kind of complementary to what was above. The believing spouse is under no obligation to maintain a marriage with an unbelieving spouse who decides to leave the relationship. So in terms of kind of the when you can and when you can't, and when you're to stay and when you're good to go, and if you can get married, remarried, and if you can't. So if an unbelieving spouse leaves the relationship, the believing spouse is under no obligation to try to maintain that marriage. So he kind of specifies on that. It's kind of an important note. I saw a video discussing 7:14. What are y'all's thoughts on this passage? Was that the one I just read? No, it was right above or right below that.
14. That's the one I highlighted. I think we touched on it a little bit. I said I liked it because I think you said it was beautiful. I think so too, because I feel like, if say my wife wasn't a believer, if we truly love each other, I feel like we have something in common. So I feel like there's a really good likelihood that I could probably lead her to Christ, especially if she's, loves me enough to marry me. Then there's gonna be something she likes about me. So, and I mean,
yeah,
a lot of your personality, if you are a believer, is biblical or around church. So I feel like you could be their gateway.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That's kind of my take. I don't know.
So there, I've got an old note here. Some believing spouses in Corinth may have been concerned that sexual relations with their unbelieving spouse would cause defilement. Paul explains to these believers that they are not defiled. Instead, it is their unbelieving spouses who are sanctified. So again, it still goes with what we're talking about. Through the process of knowing a believer, and then it compares you or wants you to go... Oh, that's an Old Testament footnote. This does not mean that such spouses receive salvation. So it's really complementary to what we're saying. Yeah. So Paul explains that these believers that are not defiled, instead, it is their unbelieving spouses who are sanctified. So rather than pushing the negative, the defilement, he's pushing the positive in that you're under sanctification. But through this process, it does not mean the spouse achieves or receives salvation through that kind of by osmosis, but that you have this sort of sanctification by being with the believer. That again, as we kind of discussed, is a hopeful, faithful movement towards the end result, which would be the salvific event. Interesting. Do you guys have anything else on this? Remember too, if anything hits you later and you're in that Discord, the threads are set up so you can drop comments in there, throw questions in there. You're obviously welcome to DM me anything, and I'll get back to you fairly quickly on Discord, on social media. It's going to take a lot longer. Marshall, right. That's what I was essentially asking. The group was discussing whether or not the unbelieving spouse would receive salvation or not. Just curious as to what y'all thought. Yeah, no, you can't. I don't believe you can receive salvation through osmosis, but I think it puts you in a good, yeah, exactly. It puts you in a good situation. It puts you in a good footing it's positive influence. You're with somebody that you respect. You're with somebody that you love. You're with somebody who you're interested in what they're interested in. That's just kind of a part of what love in a relationship is. And so, there's a high chance, a high probability that some of that rubs off on you and then leads towards the salvific event.
And I guess if you want to look at it eternally, because once in heaven, no one's married, right?
Yes.
Like you don't have a spouse in heaven.
Yes.
So if you look at it that way, you're good. If your spouse doesn't go, I'm sure you care, but
Yeah.
Eternally, you won't.
No, yeah. That's a whole wild thought process. Yeah. You can't even imagine
what I do.
what's after that. But yeah, that's an interesting thing to add. Yeah. Is that none of it really matters after y'all die. It's all for naught. So you're really just trying to help that person get there too. That was a good thing to add, man. I wouldn't have even thought to throw that in.
I was just trying to find the silver lining there.
Closer to receiving and accepting the knowledge and faith. Yeah, exactly. Marshall, exactly. My first time here, I found you on TikTok, the person who is not a dog. I remember your message. That was funny. I joined. She goes, I'm not a dog like my TikTok picture is. I may have deducted that without the help, but I also might not have. I joined late, but I'm looking forward to the future studies. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thanks for coming. If you get in the Discord too, you'll have all the events and everything. It's every Sunday night, and then the weekdays, we don't know because my life is crazy. So I'll try to at least give you guys 24 hours. But the Sunday nights will be set, so you can at least guarantee those. All right, anybody have anything else? We are done with these. So the next one will be Sunday, like I just said. And let's see how long these bad boys are. Oh, 8 is incredibly short.
9's not bad either.
All right, so yeah, next will be 8 and 9. Sunday night, 6 p.m. Central Time. Be way cooler if it were a dog. Yeah, you have to get in the Discord because there was a dog photo trade-off a little while ago.
Yeah, we got them on there.
Yeah, and I got all of our dogs except for Kip. I couldn't find Kip at the time, so I got everybody but him.
Karina. Thank you for being on vacation.
Yeah, sorry.
2 nights in a row.
Sorry, Karina, about yesterday. I'm very sorry.
Great to see Mikkel.
Yeah,
Alex
Mikkel
was here last time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alex made his way into the Discord too.
Oh, he did, sweet.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yay, got another Discord.
Do it.
Copan wants to know your thoughts of snakes.
What's your thoughts of snakes? Oh my god. That is another day, baby. That is another day. We have 2 snakes in the house, and she really wants me to address the fact that Satan is depicted as a snake in the Bible. I'm telling Kip on you. That's okay. Kip loves me. He'll get over it. Someone over here says, I want a finger tattoo. How bad do they hurt? I have an ankle and ribs done already. Finger tattoos hurt.
Really, all I have is ribs. That's all I got.
Were they bad for you?
Well, like I'm ticklish. It was my first tattoo. Well, like my first tattoo, the only one I have is my ribs. And I told the guy, I was like, I'm really ticklish. He was like, all right, I'll just do a line and you tell me. And I was like, no, that doesn't tickle. I was like, you're good.
My ribs weren't bad. Mine weren't bad.
It was fine. It was bad until as soon as he quit, it didn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
So it was just like as he was going.
The nerves, man, they'll get you. Alex, have a good night. Angela, you're lovely. Have a good night. Hopefully see you guys Sunday. But yeah, the finger tattoo hurts.
Really?
TikTok person.
Mine are so callous that I probably wouldn't even feel it.
Oh, bro, it feels like fire. That's the only way I can describe it. It feels like somebody's holding a lighter directly against your skin. There's no meat. It's just bone. You can like feel the bone vibrating. Yeah. If you got meaty hands, it might be a little bit better, I guess. But
so, well, when I got my rib tattoo, I was skinny.
Yeah,
I'm not fat now. But I was skinny, so
that's harder. Sometimes the fat does make it worse though, because the fat actually pushes the nerves closer to the skin. So depending on where it is in your body, it can either be good or it can be bad. You don't know until you're in it.
I heard the throat sucks.
Yeah, that hurt a lot. Right on the Adam's apple. Because the same thing, you can like feel it vibrating. And it's just very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. I'm glad I got all this when I was young and I didn't care and I thought it was, tough. Now I think I'd think twice.
Well, the only part I hated worse than getting it was the 2 weeks or whatever, just having to keep lotion on it. That was the worst part.
Yeah, the aftercare was a bummer. Dustin, have a good night. Hopefully see you on the Discord.
Yeah, my son always tells me, Daddy, I like the words on you. I want pictures or I want words. Another day.
Do they express that they want to get tattoos already?
He has, yeah.
Has he? My girl's like, I don't want any. I don't like the way they look. I'm like, oh, thanks, baby. You're so sweet. Oh. All right, you guys have anything else before we jump off here?
Like right at an hour. Beautiful.
Yeah, we killed it. It was perfect. I would take like 30 seconds. Anything else? And then I'll shut this all down. I'll see you guys Sunday. I have a question, Kayla says. For a tattoo idea. Okay, we can do that. What language did you most likely speak? Hebrew. Arabic.
You spoke Arabic?
There's debate, but yeah, more than
There's
likely.
debate. Okay.
There's always debate.
He spoke
But
Jew.
I'm sure that he also spoke Hebrew. But if I was going to get something like that was supposed to be translated by Jesus or said by Jesus, I would honestly either get it in Greek or I would get it in Arabic. Those would be my opinions. I want to get Kingdom Citizen tattooed in the language he spoke. That would be cool. That'd be a cool tattoo. Yeah, those would be the two.
I have then what is Tetelestai, the last thing he said in that, like, it is finished? Is that is the last thing he said before he died on the cross?
What, in Greek? Is it out of the New Testament?
I don't remember. I have the bracelet Tetelestai, and it's like, it is finished. But I don't know. I think it's
I'd have to see
Hebrew.
And it could be. Yeah, I mean, all of the New Testament is Greek, but then so there were a lot of translations from Arabic. That's why that's so hard, man. The whole Bible thing and the accuracy and everything is just how many times it was translated, and then how they had to describe it, all by hand, word for word, from language to language, of people who some of them didn't know it as well as maybe they could have. Arabic looks really cool. That's why if it was me, I would probably go with Arabic. But Greek also looks pretty cool. They're both gorgeous looking languages.
And red writing for the Jesus. Right. I got an awesome idea for a sleeve, but my wife's like,
What is it?
I want to get like like we're the light of the world. So I want to get like up at my shoulder, get like a tiny light surrounded by dark forests with like wolves headed up the hill, and then down towards the arm have an elephant, each elephant for the person in the family, with like arrows headed towards the wolves, because like we are the archers.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
So y'all can have that if you want it, because I'll never get it.
I just pulled this out. I misspoke, Kayla. It's Aramaic. Aramaic. So be careful. Arabic is also a very pretty language, though. That'd be a sick sleeve. Your wife doesn't want you to get it?
Well, she's just like, it'd be so expensive, and how are you going to get a job?
Yeah, cut it off at the wrist.
I know, yeah. As long as you cut it off right there.
That's the deal.
Fine.
That's the deal. I wish I would have.
Nah.
Regrets. What are you going to do with them? Not a whole lot. Yes, very careful. Make sure you pick a good artist, too. That's my other advice.
I'm going to have to start a tattoos part on the Discord.
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. We should do that. It'd be cool for people to show off tattoos. Oh,
great. Then people are going to ask you to put all yours on there, though.
Cat will take pictures of me everywhere that people are allowed to see. Oh, God.
When did you get it? What does each one mean, Joe?
Oh, my gosh. We're not doing that. Can't do that. Yeah, definitely can't do that. I got to at least do the testimony again first so people don't think crazy stuff. I've got some wild tattoos, man. Wow. All right, guys, I'm going to hop off. We're going to get out of here. Yep. You got another 10 seconds for any last minute questions. Otherwise, just throw it in the Discord. We'll get to it. That's what it's for. That's the beauty of it.
Tattooed Theist Discord.
No, you can't find it that way. It's secret.
Oh yeah,
Secret. It's invite only. I think just you and I are able to populate an invite link.
So you gotta hit up old Joe.
Yeah, you gotta DM me, or if you find Drew on Instagram, then we can get you that way. Kat, I'm not paying you for anything. I pay you with my love on a daily basis.
So much. It's all together.
There's probably like 2 tattoos that aren't directly connected to all of the other tattoos.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's just because I couldn't get them finished, and I'm not paying for tattoos. It's not happening. All right, guys, we're out. Love you all. Have a beautiful evening.
Yeah.
And we'll see you Sunday or before that in Discord. If you're not in there and you want there, you got to DM me on social media somewhere. Have a lovely evening. Drew, I'll